All right, here we go. Clap for me, will you? That's the Rob clap. Everybody knows it. Guys, good morning. Jeremy, National Fire Radio with Tucker. Heather, our newest addition, which we'll talk about in just a very quick minute. And Jason Wilson, Bear Wilson.
Yes, sir.
It's badass, man.
Good morning.
Bear is from Houston Fire, currently a captain on the hazmat company.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. He's in New Jersey for the holidays. No place better to be.
Right? Little snow this morning, too.
Little snow this morning, that's right. Yeah. But excited to have him. We kind of crossed paths, and we invited him into the studio to capture some stories out of Houston, Texas, which, for me, a little New Jersey guy, big state of Texas, man, there's a lot coming out of there. And thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Awesome to have you for a few minutes here. And so I want to take you away from your family. I'm sure you've been cooped up with everybody for a week or two now, so it might be a little. I'm going for coffee. I'll be back in 3 hours.
Getting a little stale in there.
That's funny. Hey, real quick while we start, new face Heather. Heather, thanks for joining us. Heather is going to become part of the team with the new studio coming on board and a lot of the new types of segments we're going to be putting out. And so we welcome you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. It's awesome. Rob is on a sabbatical today. Yeah, he's actually down in South Carolina visiting family, and so we're rolling without him, and I hope we can get through without him. We miss him. Rob, we miss you. But anyway.
You should have a notebook.
Yeah,
start
filming everyone.
She's smart. She doesn't need a notebook. Anyway, so here we are, and of course, Sebby behind the camera as always. But this is kind of like a last minute thing, and I'm glad we did this, and I'm glad that you had a few minutes to join us. And this studio, we turned the lights out on this thing like 2 weeks ago, and we were tearing it down and so on. And I had to resurrect some of it this morning to get it back up and online to be here. And I know it's nothing, you're looking at me like, what studio? Like, this place. But this is, but this is where we began. And so this is big for me because you're the last one that's going to be in this place. And this has been our first year of National Fire Radio. So it's kind of, it's awesome.
Still have the festive tunes.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But the new studio is going to be really legit. We keep talking about it, but I'm super excited to get it online. It's actually going to look somewhat professional compared to this little makeshift garage that we have going here. But anyway, Bear, thank you. Thanks for joining us. So real quick, just want to capture your story. We want to hear about you. I read your bio. There's a lot in it, and so on. So Houston Fire, 23 years on the line?
17 in
17,
Houston.
okay.
Yep. 6 in a city prior to that. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And now you're currently signed as a captain to the hazmat company, which is not a discipline that I am well versed on or want to be, I think, for that matter. So I give you and your guys a lot of credit. So maybe you can hit on that a little bit, or maybe start about the beginning of your career and how you got to where you are.
Sure.
So go ahead, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm honored to be here. So thank you very much for allowing me to come and visit. And didn't anticipate sitting down and having a chat and sharing some stories, but it's wonderful, and I'm excited to do that.
Happy to have you.
We've in Houston, there's fourth largest department. We're making 1,000 calls a day. 28% of those calls are motor vehicle accidents, which come in as most of the time as EMS. So there's a lot going on there. However, our story hasn't been told out there as much as I want it to be told. And this is, let me get one thing straight. This is not about me. This is about my guys and the Houston Fire Department.
Awesome.
Number one. I get bored talking about myself. So I started in Missouri City, Texas, which is a little suburb of Houston, Texas. And
what's the population there?
Population at the time was about 25,000. Now it's up to about 60,000. So it's a bedroom community. Mm-hmm. We had 3 stations at that time. Now they've got 6. We were running 2 people per apparatus. And we had what we call PSOs, public safety officers. So the police officers were firemen, and the firemen were police officers.
Nice.
So on a house fire, we would take a fire truck with 2 guys on it to the fire. The cops would come screaming over. They'd get out of their cop uniform, put on the fire uniform, and go in with us.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that is nutso, man.
Never heard of that.
Yeah.
To start that.
So my first house fire was an actual friend of mine from high school. Her house caught on fire. I was out doing a PR event in the fire car 5, and the senior guy stayed behind to man the fire truck. So we make this house fire. I pull up first, blowing and going. next thing I know, he's pulling up on the apparatus. I go run and skull drag the 5-inch at the time. And next thing, there's cops coming, just raining down on us. And they're all throwing their cop gear off, putting their fire gear on. I go grab the fire gear and then we take off inside. Yeah.
So what? So what was the name of the public safety then? Are you a public safety department or?
At the time, it was, and they were actually in the phase of in process of phasing that out. So
Okay.
they realized that they were taking police off the street, and the crime would spike a little bit.
Hey, there's a
people would
fire.
know.
Yeah, hey, there's a fire. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Let's go rob the. Let's go get the quickie mark.
Yeah. Somebody said with NFPA standards, hey, this doesn't look good. So yeah, it was a public safety department.
Yeah.
And the actual police chief was also the fire chief as well. So as you could see, and as you know in a lot of towns, that with the police chief being the fire chief as well, who got more of the funding and the resources and stuff like that. So they realized that, and then they broke it off, and the assistant chief in the fire department actually became the fire chief and served there for a while after that. But I stayed on the job there 6 years, and then moved over to Houston after that.
And I think you indicated before too that you always had the desire to be a Houston fireman, right? That was okay.
Yeah. So there was a couple months after that, we were sitting in the fire station, and big fire happens right outside of our city, which we had city boundaries with Houston, and it ended up being a salt mine or salt factory. And next thing we know, we're getting dispatched over there to mutilate them. So we pull up. They only wanted our water thief. That's the only thing they wanted was the water thief. And I thought, yeah. So we're sitting there watching this thing burn, and there was probably 40 fire trucks there, and then ours, and just two of us. And the chief comes up to us and tells us, "Can't do much with two people. We need more than that." And so they took our water thief. We went back to the fire station, went back in service. A couple hours later, they brought the water thief back to us. And, from that moment on, I thought, you know what, man, I want to be a Houston fireman. Man, this is cool. This is the place to be. So, started putting in my application. 6 applications. 6 years later, I finally got accepted into the Houston Fire Department. So
That's cool.
Good stuff. Yeah.
That's great. And here you are now. So up through the line. So I'm guessing you served in a lot of different capacities. When you came on, so Houston? It's a massive, 4th largest. You said
4th largest.
Okay. Who's the largest in Texas? Do you know?
We are.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, we are.
Oh, yeah. Fourth largest in the nation.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm here. It's a little early for me.
It's okay.
Stick with me.
Another cup of coffee?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
okay.
we're not drinking beer is the thing.
Right.
Not yet. We at least wait till noon for that over here.
Yeah.
But so how does the process in Houston Fire? Because every city obviously is different. So when you come in, do you get assigned to? Do they float you around at different companies? You just get assigned to a company? How do you know? How do you find your way? I mean, what's the story?
So tradition has been the assistant chief over training will figure out who's the FTOs that are available in the fire stations, and then they'll try to figure out the busiest companies that are available as well out of those available FTOs, and then they'll, I guess about a week before you graduate, pretty much know exactly where you rank in your class from highest to lowest grade wise, and they'll put all these companies on the chalkboard with the shift, and number one guy gets to pick the first one, and
So
then all the way down to
very similar to a lot of the Northeast cities and that I know of, how they do it then. Top of the class really gets their pick, and then the bosses argue and fight over who gets who throughout the class, and then you find your way.
How many do you have in a class, and how many classes would you have in a year?
Typically, right now, I just did a tour at the academy for 14 months. Anywhere between, so a fast track class is guys that have worked in another department that have come to work for us.
Okay.
So we only put them through about an 8-week familiarization.
You have to learn your methods.
Right. Those are 20, 25 people. The full track classes are 70 to 80 people, and we generally run in 3 to 4, sometimes 6 classes a year. 2 fast track classes at least, and then the rest of them are full track classes. So, yeah. So we're running. When I was in the academy as in the fast track program back in 2002, we ran 360 people through the academy in 1 year. So yeah, a lot of
And
fun.
what's the full strength
Full strength of
of your department?
so 4,000. 4,000. There's 850 on duty every day,
Okay.
and then that other 150 of those 4 shifts, which would make up about 600 people. Those are in administrative positions, or maybe somebody that's off on injured or
Right.
whatever it may be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you find your way up through the ranks, right? I mean, you had to go some fires and have some fun, and anything stick out? Any fires or stories stick out in your mind that that you were like, man, that's one for the career, or that's one that really. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, we can come back to it. It's just everybody usually has that one or two stories that just sticks out, and they're like, man, that was a good one.
Crazy. Yeah, absolutely. so Houston, well, let me back up. Missouri
Yeah.
City, we get dispatched to Houston for a large fire, but we got sent back into one of their fire stations. Now we're picking up their calls. And this is 1994, I believe it is, June of 94. So we're starting to pick up their calls, and next thing we know, we're responding with these other cities. They're picking up calls, mutual
Right.
aid. So we don't have a mutual aid box alarm assignment. There's no MABIS agreement within our city to these other cities.
Does all your threads and things match?
No, no, they didn't. They didn't at the
Well,
Well,
time.
I'm sure we're gonna find out in a
Yeah.
minute.
So we were already on the Stort system, and they weren't at
Yeah.
all.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of those issues as well. So we're making a couple of medical runs. The next thing you know, we get dispatched over to the fire, and we are sent to supply this 1,500-foot lay. And so we're in there. We break the supply, and we're boosting the pressure into a large warehouse fire. Most of it was plastic pellets inside the warehouse, and Houston ended up losing 3 apparatus. Matter of fact, because of the walls falling out and crushing Ladder 19, and I can't remember the other 2 engine companies. But they were on that fire for about 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So we went over there and we pumped. We ended up. The senior man was driving. I was riding the seat, which didn't make sense, but that's what he wanted to do. And we ended up pumping on that fire for probably 13 or 14 hours or so.
That's when you
Yeah.
call the fuel truck.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's exactly
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
right,
Yeah,
right.
call the field. So what did I do? Nothing but sit back and watch the big column of smoke and watch the rest of the guys
Yeah.
do a little bit of work. But of course, it was surround and drowned when we got there. So that was probably the biggest one that
Yeah.
kind of made me think, wow, man, this is some cool stuff. However, when you really look back on it and what was in there and what was burning and
Gross.
what we were all exposed to at the time, because it's not cool to wear your air pack. It's not cool to wear
Which
a filter.
wasn't even a conversation back in '94.
No, it wasn't.
Wasn't even a thought.
No, not at all.
You
Not
know,
at all.
and now you come full circle. I mean, this is like now that's what we were just talking about. We were talking about, and I figured it out. I believe it was San Antonio that does that with the gear,
Yes.
where they swap out gear after it's contaminated, and and more departments are doing that. I mean, it's cancer awareness, cancer prevention. I mean, it's just becoming more and more of the common theme for us. I was just reading some articles the other day about it, and it's all about the particulates, and it's getting through the gear these days and so on. And so it's just kind of interesting where thermal layering, makes us stronger, and the gear we're wearing today is better than ever, and yet it still doesn't protect from the carcinogen particulates.
So
and
even
everything
if you
else.
wear the fireball gloves, nothing gets through.
Fireball
Yes.
gloves, the leather coat. I put a post up the other day with a leather coat hanging. It's one of my old leather coats. I never wore it. It was kind of like a nostalgia thing when I got to the firehouse in '94, and so it ended up somehow it ended up in my possession, and somehow, and and it's just funny because some of the younger guys are like, "What? Like rubber? Why would you wear that?" And I'm like, "You never got wet."
Right.
They were good for traffic.
Yeah.
The one guy said it was good for like his adverse weather driving coat, like open cab, like so on. So back in the day, but anyway, yeah, that's funny. But so anyway, let's get back to the story. So and then up through the ranks, captain now.
Captain now. Yes,
So
sir.
how did you end up? Can I ask how you end up in a hazmat company?
No, absolutely. That's a good story.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So I'm a
Must have
proponent
lost a
of
bet or something.
No, it wasn't.
Has a good pair of sneakers in the
Tucker,
box.
some guys like it, so let them talk, will you? God, you're gonna insult our guest who's gonna walk
Let's
off.
kill this guy.
No, those are blue canaries. That's what we call the cops, the blue canaries. Come on.
This guy backhands you, you're going for a ride. I'm telling you.
Well, these walls are coming
Maybe
down
very
here.
careful.
That's it.
So I'm the guy that a class comes available within the department, or if there's an opportunity to travel somewhere and take a class,
Sure.
I'll jump on it. You know, if I can learn just a little bit more about something that I don't know, I think it makes me a better all-around, not only person, but also a firefighter. Number one, firefighter. So back in 2006, I took our hazmat class. So Houston puts on a hazmat class, and it's taught by the Houston firefighters. And you have to go through our particular hazmat class in order to transfer into the hazmat station. And so hazmat began in October the 5th of 1979 and has always been kind of a prestigious place to be in our city. We have a huge petrochemical corridor, our ship channel, and we have, there's one particular bridge over the ship channel. There's 14,000 hazmat shipments that travel over that bridge in one 24-hour period. So transportation-wise, it's crazy for those guys. And
14,000 shipments over one bridge in a day.
Yep. And so that was 2006. I was at a very busy engine company. We were making, on my shift alone that particular year, I looked back at some notes, we made 93 working house fires. And so busy, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun. Good crew, solid. You step off a truck, and I looked at the other firefighter. He knew what I was going to do. I knew what he was going to do. The officer never even turned around and talked to us, And we had a lot of fun. So 2009 came, a aircraft rescue firefighting class comes up. And one of my buddies that I was living close to says, "Hey, man, let's take this class together. We can work together." All right, I'm kind of a plane geek, too. Okay, cool. So I take the class. Huge scandal. Won't get into the details. ARF, so there's 4 stations in the ARF, 3 at the northern airport, 1 at the southern airport. Of the 120 people that are on duty at the ARF stations, all 4 shifts, 30 of those left. So the chief over ARF, the battalion chief, we call them district chiefs, the district chief over ARF said, "Hey, look, we need some people to come fill these 30 holes." And I was about 9 on the seniority list, so I got moved administratively over to ARF. And got in there, and it just wasn't my thing. But I was committed for 3 years. So, you know what? I'm not going to stay around this place. I'm going to start promoting and see if I can promote out.
Sure.
So I promoted up to driver, and
You got to drive the ARF trucks?
got to drive the ARF trucks. It was fun. Yeah, it's cool stuff.
We were just a side note. We were out at Pierce a couple weeks ago, and we went through the ARF plant, and just sitting in those things, man, unbelievable.
Oh, they are.
Like a video game.
They're like a video game.
Everything's at your fingertips and your feet, and like you can control the whole rig. A multi-million-dollar rig sitting in one seat.
Yep, sure can.
And you sit center, which is so cool.
Yep.
But anyway, go ahead, Bear.
No, and they perform like a race car. A lot of them
Yeah.
do. I mean,
Well, they got 2 giant engines in the back.
Well, they said they were ready to move up to 70 miles an hour and flow water.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Insanity.
It is. Yeah.
Gotta go.
Absolutely.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
You're washing the windshield at that point.
Yeah, you are. So I spent a little bit of time at ARF, and then I came out and drove a chief for a while, which was a lot of fun for about 18 months. So that's probably the best officer development that I can ever share with anybody was driving a battalion chief, and you get to see the fire from so many different perspectives.
Oh, I want to talk about that in detail, but we'll get to it. Go ahead,
Yeah,
brother.
absolutely. And you get to hear what he has to say. You're listening to. You're in meetings with deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs, and you just kind of figure out how this department works. And so, and we'll get back, and I'd like to talk about
of course,
how people should be raised into that position, I guess you could say. So anyway, I did that for about 18 months, then I got promoted. So our promotional system is firefighter, engineer operator, captain, senior captain, district chief, deputy chief. That's the civil service promoted ranks. So instead of lieutenant, we have a captain. Instead of captain, we have a senior captain. Right. So I got promoted to captain, and I bounced around a bunch of companies, almost about a year. And one of my best friends got promoted to assistant chief of the training academy. Asked me, "Hey man, would you come out to the training academy and lead a couple programs for me?" I thought, well, okay, sure. This is something different that I haven't done, but sure, why not? So I did 14 months at the training academy, and we ran through a bunch of programs there, and just it's been a lot of fun, good stuff. So hazmat, the matter of fact, we were teaching hazmat incident commander to all of our district chiefs, and the district chief over hazmat came to me one day and said, "Hey man, you're doing all this work for me. I really appreciate what you're doing. We've got a spot available, and I want you to put in for it." So I put in for it. In August, I got it. And so I've been there. I've been in our hazmat for only about 4 months now. Well, since August. So, however, prior to that, the county. So, kind of interesting down there in Houston. So our county, Harris County, is about 1,200 square miles. The city of Houston covers 670 of the 1,200 square miles.
Wow.
There's 2.5 million people inside the city limits. Outside the city limits in unincorporated Harris County, 2.5 million people. 54 fire departments within that county, 140 law enforcement agencies. So on my days off, I worked for the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, which they support all the other 53 fire departments outside the city limits. They have a hazardous materials team. So a good friend of mine retired from Houston, went to Harris County Hazmat. He was assistant chief and said, "Hey, this is 2008. Hey, would you come work for me as a part-time hazmat guy over here?" It's making $25 an hour to work one 24-hour shift. Do that once a month. That's a pretty good little gig.
Right.
So that's kind of how I got my feet wet, and I did that for 10 years. And then this came up with the city, and so I moved over. Being asked to put your application in for or submit your transfer by the chief is kind of an honor
Right.
with us.
For sure.
We changed our tradition to where the member that wants to apply for that position has to go and ask the chief for permission. We changed that because it was creating some disparity and
Right.
angst. And hey, look, we don't want this guy, so we're going to try to figure out a way to bump him out, type thing. When you look at these specialty units, you really have to make that team fit together, and people need to know how each other's going to act. And there's some things that that happen outside of our control, stuff that happens at home, stuff that maybe health-wise, that if you're not a good team member, when we're entering a toxic atmosphere,
Yeah.
that can be deadly.
Without
it
a
can
doubt.
only be deadly to us, but it can be deadly to every other firefighter that's there supporting us. So, we'd really like to see where we pick and choose the right team members to come in and play. And I'm not looking for the best friend. I'm not trying to be a best friend as an officer. I want the best team member, the best person that's going to play together. I don't care who you are, where you come from. You just got to have a good core group. And matter of fact, on my truck, we have two rescue body rigs and then one foam pumper. And on my truck, I permanently assign one firefighter to that particular truck. He doesn't rotate to the other two trucks, which has kind of made a couple of guys upset with that, but he's the senior man, 28 years in the department, 24 of that within hazmat. And so I want that guy
Yeah.
there
No
as my
doubt.
advisor
Of
regardless.
course. Yeah, of course.
And
Of
so,
course.
I think we should be able to, in our in specialties, should be able to pick and choose those guys who's coming in, who has an extra set of skills. My driver, he's a master electrician.
Right.
He's got a set of skills that he can look at an incident and go, "Hey man, let's think about this." And I'm going, never even occurred to me.
I think you're dead on, and a lot of these special services in the Northeast, the bosses get to handpick basically the guys from the cream of crop of other companies, and they look for that special skill set, and they say, you're a rock climber, or you're this, or you're that, you're a plumber, construction, whatever, an engineer, and they get to take those skill sets, and when you could bring people like that into a specialty company where they are highly disciplined in their orientation, like you guys are hazmat specialists, like this is your game. You got to be well-rounded, and you're right. You got to have the right people in those positions. Guys hide all the time on an engine or a truck.
Yep.
They can hide.
Yep.
If you have a 5-man truck or a 6-man truck or 4-man engine, and you're not to go into fires every day, guys can hide.
Yep.
It's a fact of life. You and your guys can't hide.
No.
Right.
We're citywide. We have our ETA even run emergencies sometimes.
Holy crap!
The city is 70 miles from
Yeah.
from the south city limits to the north. City
And you're the
limits,
only
70
hazmat
miles.
company in the entire city.
In the entire city.
Yeah.
So it's 70 miles from southern city limits to the northern city limits, and it's 60 miles from the east to west. And so, with 2.5
Where are
million
you
people.
centrally located then?
No, we're on the east side, right next to the ship channel.
Right.
So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we get part of our funding through those
Sure.
refineries, and we are actually part of their Mavis. If anything happens, and
But a lot of those refineries and so on will have their own teams as well.
oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
So you're
absolutely.
you're offsetting their initial response.
And
Typically.
we're there as a support.
Support.
If we respond to a refinery fire, a lot of times most of the stuff that we'll do is research for them. And,
Gotcha.
and collection of the paperwork, getting reports together. I mean, we're just a huge support role for them.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we had a trench rescue. So you were talking about some innovations earlier. So we had a trench rescue a couple weeks, I guess almost a month and a half ago, and took us 45 minutes to get there. 2:00 in the afternoon. Guy had been stuck in the hole already for 10 minutes prior to the initial 911 call.
Right.
So we're there an hour after the incident actually happens. It makes it difficult sometimes, and really to be an effective support. However, we like to keep the team together so that we play together, practice together, work together. We're all together at one time. So it's kind of why we've kept them all in one station at one time.
And that's for hazmat. But you have
That's-
rescue companies, right?
Three rescue companies.
Right, and tech rescue
Yep.
and all that, right? So
Yes.
when you go, so the hazmat team you actually went on the trench box?
Yeah.
So what, are you more of a support, like I'm just trying, I don't know.
Air monitoring.
Air
So
monitoring.
We are their air monitoring crew.
Okay.
Yeah. So that particular cool innovation that came out of that particular
Yeah.
scene, 10 feet down on the ground, no shoring. It's about 3 feet wide. As I said, 10 feet down. Box must have been about 15 feet long. Huge AT&T fiber optic upgrade throughout the entire city. There's no less than about 20 crews in the city right now, digging holes, sending some optics through lines. So this particular crew out of Florida, the person in charge was operating a backhoe. He's digging. Two guys help her. They jump into the hole. They help pull this line through, and they call it a missile, where they're sending. It's a weight, and it has fiber optic attached to it, and they send it through a line,
Right.
really fast speed, and then it stops, and then they dig a little bit more, and they send it through. So anyway, those two guys, they jump out of the hole, and they go back over to the truck. Well, the guy's still digging, and he notices, hey man, the missile came through, so he jumps down in the hole. Well, it sloughs off and traps him from about mid-thigh all the way up to his chest.
Wow.
So we get there and send two guys over to the edge close to the spoil pile. Tell them send one monitor down next to the patient, send another monitor over. And the big thing is I want to make sure that not only the temperature is stable in there for that particular victim, but we want to make sure that the air is turning over, and that even the machinery that's working around there isn't getting stagnant, or that the carbon dioxide's not going in there and getting trapped. And so we kept having a problem with our lead. We have a big long plastic tube that's attached to our monitors. Had a problem with the lead getting stuck into the dirt, and just kept clogging it up. So the firefighter, kept cleaning it, sending it back down. Of course, OSHA's on site. They're wanting to know what all the readings are, and we tell them later. Anyhow, so we get back to the fire station, and one of the guys that I like to have on the truck every day, he says, "Hey, Captain, what do you think about me putting a wiffle ball on the end of this line here?" I thought, keep it from getting stuck in the dirt.
I love
He goes, "Absolutely."
I love it.
So we put a wiffle ball.
Yeah.
We cut our first try was O2 tubing,
Right.
medical call O2 line. We took that tubing, we tried it, did some super glue around it, worked perfect. Then we took a golf ball wiffle ball, did it just
Yeah.
for a little
I
bit
know
smaller
exactly what
places.
you're talking about. Sure.
And so there's nothing in the amount of air that it tests or pulls in, draws in. There's no changes in either wiffle ball. compared to another unit sitting right next to it getting another sample. So
great.
really cool innovation. That's something that we're going to put on YouTube. We
Yeah.
talked about it the other day.
Hell yeah.
I told him, I said, Trey, I said, dude, I want to video this and put this on YouTube because why shouldn't everybody else know about this? You know?
Yeah.
This is a cheap innovation.
Well, feel free to
that
share
really
with
is-
National Fire Radio.
Oh,
We'd be happy.
absolutely.
We'd be happy to point it out there for
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
But I think like that's, and you know what I love is like, you know, some of my favorite times in the firehouse and in the fire service, and I could attest to this with a bunch of different guys in a lot of different firehouses, is like getting back to the firehouse and like doing something, creating something, or figuring out or solving a problem like that. And you know, at the workbench, and guys are trying different things, or you're coming up with ideas. I love that because firemen inherently are full of ingenuity.
Yep.
We have to get the job done 100% of the time. So we always have to find an answer. We always have to find a way to do it, right? And so that's cool. Like I think that's fantastic.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's simple. It's like easy, and it's just one of his guys saying like, "Hey man, we got to make this better. How do we make it better? Oh, I got an idea.
Yep.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
You know, that's the fun part about being on a specialty team and those guys bringing those special skill set from other areas is that they can take that difficult position that you're in and kind of see it from a different lens, and then all of a sudden start applying some of the stuff. Man, I remember when I was pulling a bunch of electrical line through that particular warehouse, I had to use this tool and it worked this way. And man, why can't we do that? You know, when we got to overturn MC 331, you know, what's wrong with that? So yeah, really cool stuff. So
No
a lot
doubt.
of fun.
So it sounds like you like where you are right now. This is a good spot.
Wonderful spot.
Yeah.
So there's two captains. I'm on Unit 1. The captain on Unit 2, he's got about 32 years in the fire service. Probably 23 or 24 years of that is hazmat. He was a radiological tech in the Navy prior to becoming into the fire service. So the guy, that's his specialty, is radiological stuff. And so we all have a specialty in there. And I've got transportation emergencies, so I'm kind of into trucks and trailers and stuff like that. As I mentioned, Captain Rogers is a radiological guy, a nuclear radiological guy, which is really cool. You know, so if a radiological call comes in, Captain Rogers, he's the go-to guy. Transportation call comes in, they generally look at me and say, hey, look, who do we need to contact? What size of bolt is this on this particular flange? And I could tell them, hey, when you're walking up there, you need to take a 7/8. Whatever it may be. And so that's the way we split up the team. I really like that. Is everybody takes a specialty, and when you're new on the team, you kind of, for the first year, we want you to try a little bit of this, try a little bit of that, and figure out what you may have a passion for. And then start taking the classes to specialize in that particular area, so that we complement each other. Now we may end up with a couple of WMD guys, and we don't have a radiological guy, which is okay. The good part about that is some of the team members that were on the team that promoted out, they're a radiological specialty somewhere in the city, and so I'll pick up the phone and call them.
Yeah.
Hey, can you come over here? We need your radiological help. I'll tell dispatch to add you to the record. And stuff to do.
I just think like I'm sitting here listening to your stories, and I think it's great because I'm listening to your career, and you've put yourself in a lot of different positions, from coming online to going to the training academy, now a captain in the hazmat. Like you were a chief's aide, which I want to get back to. That to me makes you a well-rounded boss, and I think it's great because when you go up the line and you want to become a senior captain and then you want to go to chief, like having things like hazmat under your belt makes you a better incident commander, plain and simple.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fantastic because a lot of times, not only that, but you have a department where you can do that though.
Right.
A lot of guys get hung up in a smaller, not hung up, but they're in a smaller department where they might not have all this opportunity, right? Yeah. And so.
But that's why you need to know your resources depending on how large or small your department is.
Without a doubt, and you still need to have
know those guys.
Yep.
On a small department, when somebody has knowledge in this or knowledge in that, and that's part of being an incident commander. Come up, talk to me, let's see what we can do, work out a plan. You just had more resources.
Right. Yeah.
And I think also though too is where you have somebody in a smaller department, you still have to round yourself out. And so you need to seek that external training, and you need to, whether you have a hazmat team or not, you should be versed in at least the basics or an operational level, and when it comes to trench and confined space, like you have to be able to at least recognize and understand and know the process and the resources and everything you need. So, whether you rode an engine for 20 years, but you want to be promoted up or, and so on, you still got to know that, you might not have the luxury of being able to get into that company and learn it for a couple of years, but to know it makes you a well-rounded and better firefighter, and boss, I think. So, but anyway, sweet. So I want to touch on a couple things. You hit on the fact that there's a bunch of guys, especially in the hazmat company, that have 20, 30 years on the
absolutely.
job. So in the Northeast, we talk about this as a common theme on our platform. We talked about it off camera before. We talked with a bunch of guys from San Antonio down when we were on our Pierce trip, and they indicated that they had a lot of guys that were in their 30-plus year range on their department. And so whereas the Northeast kind of started kicking these guys out after 20, 25 years, and it just didn't pay for them to stay anymore. And so we started losing all this we're starting to lose all this experience off the line. And so I guess Texas is a little bit different in how you keep people in the pension system and so on. The guys from San Antonio were kind of explaining it. But I have to think that having guys like the guy that you don't move off your truck, 28 years on the line, right? I think you said. Mm-hmm. And what a valuable piece of mindset to have with you, right? As a boss.
Absolutely.
And go ahead. Yeah.
So it's funny you're talking about capturing the stories, and it's so valuable, and it frustrates me when I beg guys, man, just sit down and put this on paper.
Yep.
Well, I'm not a good writer, and I'm not a good typer, and I don't care. I'll sit down, I'll video, and I'll sit there for 3 hours. I just want to listen.
I agree.
That's my biggest thing. I just want to listen. I want to take what I can from you, and it may not fit into where I need to fit into, but that little piece of knowledge, I may be able to tweak my my approach and be successful with it, where we're at. So Chief McCrae, who started the Houston Fire Department Hazardous Materials Team in October the 5th, 1979. Wow. October the 5th of 79, ended up writing a book. And he wrote a book in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the last book that was written for our hazmat team. And we're one of the very first hazmat teams in the whole country. I think we're probably the busiest in the country if you really look at it between all three fire trucks. And I only know one person that has that book that's in existence from Chief McCrae.
No kidding.
And so I told him the other day, I said, we've got our 40th anniversary coming up in 19. I told him, I said, hey, Kevin, I said, can I have the book? I really want to capture this digitally. Put it on a thumb drive and put it in a safe somewhere,
right.
Number one. Number two, I wanted to make copies of that and be able to actually print it into the book format and hand it out to the guys, because they really need to see where we've come from, what these guys went through, and some of the innovations that they really came up with.
Yeah.
And then why don't we write our own book?
Right.
Why don't we take the time and start
Chapter 2?
Yeah, absolutely 2.0. Write our own book and let's go forward with it. Right now, I think our team is one of the strongest teams that has been in the Houston Fire Department. And there's so much diversity within the membership right now that if we don't capture this, then what's tomorrow going to look like?
Right.
And so that's difficult. A lot of the senior men on the job don't value the magazines like you were talking about, Fire Rescue, Fire Engineering, Firehouse. Because the Northeast doesn't know how we do it down here in Texas. We don't have cocklofts in Texas.
I get it.
And so it's frustrating. As an officer, it's frustrating for me, for the guys not to say, you know what, a cockloft, we call that an attic or a void space or something like that, just a little bit different.
Right.
And why don't you share it? Why don't you share what we've done? A lot of our responses, as far as fire-wise, are lightweight construction.
Right.
And you don't have a lot of lightweight construction up here.
No,
you know?
it's now
We're
it's
getting
It's coming in.
Oh,
It's coming
without a
in.
doubt. I mean, this is what we're dealing with now.
But I mean, we're throwing up houses down there in
Right.
90 days. I
Right.
mean, from the time that they clear the land and to the final shingle on the roof going, it's 90 days. And so, but back to the hazmat team and back to capturing some of this stuff. We all evolve. And the job is evolving. It's evolving away from really what we got into it for, and that's to make the fires and to come out looking all, worn and tethered and stuff like that. However, there are still some practices that began yesterday that are still valuable for tomorrow,
Yep.
and we got to capture all that. So, 18-wheelers, they're not changing really too much. The engines maybe a little bit, but.
Right.
But a tractor trailer, some of the trailers, the MC331s, 406s, and stuff like that, they're not changing, and they haven't changed a lot at all since they really started making them. We had a MC331 with the LPG in it the other day that was built 1960, and there's not a lot of difference between the brand new one that's coming off the line today. We gotta keep those, and we gotta capture it and pass it on to the next guy.
Without
So
a doubt, and
that's a big
I
job.
think really in your discipline too. I mean, it's you guys never ever. I know we say it's the cliche thing to say, right? Not every fire is the same. Everything's different. But when you're into tech rescue and when you're into specialty stuff like you guys, I mean, every little nugget of knowledge that you learn on this type of trailer or this boat or this pipeline can only add to the betterment of the next response to that type of situation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think it's hugely important. I think that's incredible. And I love the fact that you recognize that and you want to do that, because being able to put that all together to educate the guys and capture those stories, I mean, just to hit on what you said, like being able to sit around and talk to guys like yourself, I'm learning so much today, and it's just going to make me a better fireman and a better person. And so, when these guys take all this with them and they leave and we don't get those stories back from them to try to educate the next generation up, I can learn just as much sitting at this table today with you than I could maybe on a training ground for an hour swinging irons.
Yep.
It's just different types of training and different types of experience, but it's valued the same in my world. Sitting around with the senior guys and capturing those stories, man, the things I've learned and heard of and then want to go try.
But, it's tough to find a senior guy.
Well, I know.
No, it is.
Right, but this is what we're doing,
Especially
right?
senior
This is why we're here.
So you touched on some stuff about 25 years and our pension system, and
Right.
There's a lot of politics happening in Houston right now, and you just Google Houston firefighters and Proposition B, but I'm not going to get too deep into that
Sure.
stuff. This is not the platform. So in the 90s, 74 on, we had pay parity with our police department. And in the 90s, the mayor was a former police chief. He broke that pay parity. So part of what we negotiated as firefighters, instead of having parity, we wanted to increase our pension system. And so our pension really was, and it was set by state law, it really was a nice, healthy pension. Matter of fact, when I got on the job, we were 98% funded. The pension system was. Our firefighter pension was. And our police pension was about 60% funded. There's some decisions they made. There again, I'm trying not to get rat-holed in that. So we did, if you do 20 years, 50% of your pay, 78 highest paychecks. So Christmas time comes along.
Right.
Everybody's on vacation.
Right.
You start working the overtime.
Yeah.
That's one of your 78 highest paychecks.
right.
So 20 years, 50%, all the way up to 30 years, you can get 80% of your pay if you retire at 30 years. And then we had a drop system. The drop started out at 7 years and then it increased to 13 years. So we had guys on the job up to 43 years
I bet.
of service because of the pension
Yeah.
and the drop. And so you could really capture, and you knew that, hey man, I'm going over there to work with Chief Phillips today. Man, that guy's been in
Yeah, and everybody's
40
like,
years.
oh man, I'd love to sit next to him for the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And that's one of the things. You're like, okay, great. It's not like my station where there's, well, at the time, a senior guy had 12 years in because
Right.
it was just a busy station. 3 EMS apparatus, 1 fire apparatus, was just a revolving door. And so, you could really capture a lot of that information, just listening to them, number one. Number two, responding on calls with those guys too. So recently our pension has changed, and so now guys are starting to go out at the 25 to 27 year. Or, matter of fact, the pay is horrible. I had a rookie when I was on an engine company before my training academy position that was claiming welfare. Fresh out of the academy, he was claiming welfare. Him and his college sweetheart, 4-year college sweetheart. She was a school teacher. They got pregnant. He tells her, "Hey, look, stay home with the kid," and they filed for welfare. So bad situation there. Now I've got guys we're averaging 18 to 20 guys a month leaving with less than 5 years of service, going to other departments.
Because of the pay.
Because of the pay.
That's big, and that's happening up here, but not so much in fire, in police.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the cops are getting in the door. The department will put them through the academy. They get online for the year, and then within a year or two, they're transferring out because now they have the academy behind them, and now they can go to another department that pays twice as good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's been part of our issue. So we are losing that generation. Golly, Jeremy, we're just losing it big time.
And this is what concerns the hell out of me. And so for me too, like, just people in the private sector, they look at the public sector and they talk about like pensions, and then like, oh my God, like we don't get that in the private sector, and this. But there's a lot of different things that have to be discussed here. And the one thing that sticks out to me all the time is like private versus public. Is that in a job like firefighting, it's not a white collar desk position, and where you can replace a salesman, or you can replace a marketing guy or an advertising guy pretty quickly, right? A 3-month 3-month transition. We fire a guy, or a guy retires, and then we just bring another guy into his position. 3 months in, he's performing just like the other guy. That doesn't happen in the public sector, in police and fire jobs and EMS and things like that. Like when we lose somebody with 25 years in because the private sector or government feels that we don't want to pay these guys anymore, or we don't want to do anything else for them, it's a detriment to the profession. It's a detriment to public safety when we're chasing guys out of the job, when we should be embracing them, because those guys are instilling these core values and life safety just concepts to the next generation. And when we chase them out, right? It's not private. This is public. This is a job. This is life safety. This is we put others before us. Hands down. That's what this job's about. What happens is when the private sector now starts to hold the hand and starts to tie our hands and pull it back in a little bit, what happens is now we're starting to lose the seniority, the experience, and then also that translates down to the next generation that maybe this is just more of a job and not a passion and craft and putting the others before us. And that's what happens. The message starts to get passed down the line, and that gets really scary.
Yeah.
Really scary.
And some of the storytelling has gone away because you had such a gap, people would sit down, open up with the senior guy, and then, a junior person would walk in and, throw in a question that would kind of, well, that changes things. Well, yeah, we did it this way, and the gap has gone away. It's shortened,
right.
And now these people aren't telling stories.
Yeah.
So, and maybe it's because of job security. Oh, I don't want to tell him that because then he knows my stuff and is going to take my job, But I'm finding that there's less and less of the stories being told, even amongst the senior guys, and they haven't been in as long as the senior guys when I was first in. I mean, They just stayed longer.
But I also
the
think
stories aren't coming out from the mid guys.
But I think part of the problem why we're not maybe getting as many stories as we used to, or the guys sitting around telling the stories, is because more and more the guys with all these years, one, they may not be getting the same level of respect that they were once getting. And two, with pension reform and things like that, we might be pushing these guys out, so it makes them more bitter. And when they used to love the job and love the craft, and this is volunteer or career.
Yes.
When they used to love it because they did it because they loved it, to the point now where they have all these years in, and either, Big Brother's pushing them out, or the younger generations just, in their eyes, don't have the same things so they don't care to engage.
Well, and it also may be because they're not asking those questions and they think they can find it on YouTube or on the internet.
But the guys that share the stories and the guys that want to sit down and pass on the craft are the guys that truly love this profession, hands down. And again, that's volunteer or career, no distinction. If they love this craft, they love this industry, they're going to do everything in their power to sit back and educate and talk and lead and educate this younger generation so that they're just as good as they were. And we're starting to lose that. And so we got to do a better job at that. We have to.
Also depends on the kind of leadership. I mean, if you have leaders who can tell stories, that's great, and that's one thing. But you also need the young people to kind of muscle and earn their way and take those classes.
Agreed.
And I think that social media can be a slippery slope because you don't know who's putting stuff out there. But it's great. If you want to do training, I think that's one of the best things about being a volunteer is that, like, if I want to go to the firehouse and pull up a YouTube video and try something and see how that works for me, I can do it. And I think that's very important. But then you kind of have to find the leader at every step along the way. You need somebody to tell you the stories with all the experience, but you also need somebody, like, to go into war with you. And you need somebody at each step of the process. It's all important. And I think that we do have a gap in the middle there. And I kind of think that that's the weak spot.
Yeah, and there used to be a little more mentoring, like you gather somebody up that, maybe you felt fond of, or, they launched onto you or something like that, and then you just kind of be with them and, mentor them along. It seems like people aren't mentoring, and it's both sides, it's both ends not coming together.
It takes facilitation. It takes both sides to find that common ground where they could both relate and want to relate. But it also takes a guy, like I know myself in my department, I'm one of the guys that facilitates the young to old and old to young. I like to get them together. I'll sit and we'll have a half-hour discussion. I'm sure Sebi can back me up on this. And I just like to get the 90-year-old guy sitting at the firehouse to talk to the 18-year-old kid. And my biggest thing, like in the volunteer side, is that so many of my friends outside of the fire service can't understand how I can be friends with an 18-year-old kid and a 90-year-old man, and it all works.
Yep.
And there's just that mutual respect. But somebody has to facilitate that respect. Somebody has to, because there is some miscommunication and some discord between older and younger, but usually we have that middle group that can bring those two groups together. And when we're missing the middle group, especially in the volunteer service, but it's happening in the career side too, when guys are getting out and then your senior guys or younger guys, the communication sometimes gets lost. And so when you have guys that are retired on the job and then they come back to the firehouse, right? And it's just they don't have that same, when they walk in, they don't, not everybody knows who they are. That's the thing. I mean, we gotta try to bridge that
That's
gap.
kind of when two teams, we're all one team in the fire department. You want to help the people, but it's when the older people don't have that connection with the younger people. The younger people, I know from experience, you think that we're doing all the muscle, we're doing all the work. Why don't people know my name?
Right.
But if you're not there hanging out with the old timers all the time, if there's no middleman, that's when these two groups just kind of step on each other's toes, and that's really how
And
it
I
shouldn't
love
be.
and I love having Heather here because she brings this young point of view, and so I mean that I'm so excited because there's so much you're going to bring to the table. Anyway, Barrett, let's get back to you. So, you know what I love about this. So I made a couple notes because Rob's not here, and Rob's always the note taker, right? And so on. But
I noticed I see his pad all the time when he's
yeah,
there.
right, of course.
Most of the time he's just doodling.
Yeah, he's drawing. Squirrel.
Yeah.
But I made there's two things I definitely want to talk about, and we're already almost an hour in. That's how quick this goes.
Wow.
Yeah. So what's fun about this? There's two things I really want to talk about. So I think the segue into the one thing is your time at the training academy. Mm-hmm. I think that's interesting to me because coming off the line, willing to go into the training academy to learn that aspect of the job, and then promoting out and going to the hazmat company and so on. But when you're in a training academy, you're dealing with in-service companies, and you're also dealing with probies, like
Absolutely.
new classes.
Yep.
So we talk about it. I don't want to harp on it, but maybe you have a point of view that I haven't, or we haven't discussed yet about the newer classes coming in, or the city of Houston, how you guys promote the brotherhood or the sisterhood in the fire service, or tradition and culture, or do the new Probie classes coming in, do they need to be, is there the same level of, togetherness or love for the craft? I mean, are you getting guys that transferred in from other departments? I mean, it just...
Would that be a helpful class if you had like a half-hour class on...
Half-hour? How about like a 4-hour class?
Well,
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Traditions in your fire department. Or, For us, it would be in Bergen County,
Right.
out, just so people could get the lay of the land and how all this came about.
So you bring up some interesting points. There's some politics involved.
Of course,
in this,
always.
I'm gonna try to stay away from those.
Listen, yeah, absolutely.
So, but however, so two totally different populations. The long track class guys that are just coming off the street,
Right.
nothing about the fire service. Many of them have military background.
Okay.
So they understand the cohesiveness of
Yeah,
the team.
it's good.
They
It's
understand
helpful.
the rank order system, etc. However, the fast track class, those guys, most of them want to be there because they think Houston is the cream of the crop, which is really good. A lot of fun to sit down and talk to those guys. So our typical fast track class, as I mentioned earlier, is about 8 weeks long. That is taught by members in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll bring a subject matter expert from the field in to teach hoses,
Right.
etc. So you do get a lot of the culture of, hey, look, this is what's going on out in the fire station. This is what you can expect going tomorrow to see this engine company, etc. And then generally we'll bring in those instructors for if we're bringing in a ladder company to show them, hey, look, this is how we have a Houston ladder set up. We don't have any pumps, water. There's
Right.
nothing on a Houston
Yeah, it's a
ladder
truck, true truck, right.
truck company. And so we'll bring in those guys that we know specifically are really good about passing on that culture as well when they have that 4-hour time block to show off their company. So when we go back to the long track classes, those are taught by members that decided to leave a post in the field and come to the academy. Now we have engineer operators all the way up through a district chief that are teaching long track classes. So I can tell you what my personal feeling about the district chief. He gets out there and he's one of the guys. He's putting on his shorts and his t-shirt and he's running with them. He's advancing line with them. He's showing them what I think a true leader should be. And he does a real good job bringing in that culture too. So we've got our senior captain over that was at one of the busiest companies in the city, downtown Houston, Station 8. Another guy brings in the culture, and he is very by the book as well, which I really like that too. It shows that hey, when you go out there, you're going to have some officers that are by the book, and you better follow it black and white. There's no gray area in there. And then we have another senior captain, female. She shows those cadets, hey, look, there is a gray area. It's okay to understand this. It's okay to ask some questions, not all questions, but it's okay. So that's how they've built the academy culture, and to bring in the old stories, and this is what to expect when you go out there for the new time. Unfortunately, we do not have a 4-hour, 8-hour block, and I think that would be really, really good.
Yeah.
You know, there's some guys I can think of off the top of my head. Senior Captain Dale Jenkins. That guy can sit down and tell some stories, and he's written a bunch of stuff on Facebook, and I keep stealing it off of there, and I'm going to put it in this book I'm talking about.
That's awesome.
And I told him that the other day. No, you're not going to do that. Yes, I am. So anyway, but I would love to bring Dale in. Problem, Dale is so smart, has so many stories up here that he'll go down this rabbit hole,
Right.
and 5 hours later you'll still
Yeah.
be on that rabbit hole. It's like, come on, Captain, let's go back over this way. You know, so
I love that.
yeah,
love
I do too. But I wish there was something that we could. We don't have it anymore. Matter of fact, with the budget, we're having to cut more and more
course.
classes out of.
You guys always have to do more with less.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been difficult. We rely on the guys, so we started a mentor program, and so one of the mentor programs is open up applications. We kind of go through, see who's had the training, who's got the experience, who we know has a good personnel file as well from their officers and stuff like that, and so we let those come in 2 hours a week. And then they mentor that particular firefighter. And a lot of times what it ends up being is just like this, is that 4 or 5 other cadets will come in and sit down with that one particular firefighter, driver, captain, whoever it may be, and then they'll start asking questions and just telling stories.
Just think about that. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what could be passed on? I mean, just in our 90 minutes we're going to sit here today.
Sure.
And what we're going to learn from each other and just take away from today. And that's why I sit back, all these interviews we do, I just sit back and I take away, and like if nothing ever happens with National Fire Radio other than this is awesome.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
some great coffee clutches.
Absolutely,
Yeah, right.
man. I mean, this is what it's about. But
yeah.
I wanted to ask in Houston. We have through our platform we've gotten to know a brother down there in another Texas department where they're growing, like you said, building homes in 90 days.
Yeah.
So the areas are growing so fast that they're opening up firehouses so fast, and departments are growing at such a rapid pace that there is no tradition and culture in a lot of these firehouses. You
It's
walk
so
in,
new.
right? You walk in, fresh paint, it's like sterile, and now you work there, and it's only a building you work in, and not like a home,
I
right?
think it comes from the firefighters.
It does,
like,
but it-
what is
but it
tradition?
takes
It's
time,
a series
right?
of stories and lived experiences. And
Yeah,
But
but look what happened at Bridgeport. How they built that brand new firehouse, and they took that old system,
I agree.
Gamewell system.
Oh, wow.
And they brought it into the firehouse,
Nice.
and it's become a part of it.
I agree, but when you're building out that many stations so fast because
Yeah.
the population is growing, you're also building out the numbers in firefighters, and so you're bringing in so many new people
Right.
that it's hard to fuel. You have to create traditions and you have to create culture. And so in Houston, do you have like company pride, like individual companies? Like you handed me your company patches today here, for hazmat and the company you were on down by the airport and so on and so forth, which is super cool. But I know like in the Northeast, I get a lot of people that reach out to us and there's almost some type of jealousy as to the Northeast because it's so rooted in culture and tradition, and that these companies have a company motto for 100 years. They're celebrating their 100th anniversary or more, and so for me, like that's all we know.
Sure.
For you, is that commonplace in Houston?
Yes.
Okay.
There are some stations that's very commonplace. There's
Cool.
other stations, the slower stations,
Yeah.
they don't end up having that culture and passing it on, which is
Yeah.
the woo-woo of the group, remember?
Yeah.
Which is kind of difficult for me. I go in and I start thinking, man, this place is bare, and what are the stories?
Yeah.
And there's
Right.
no stories at all to be told through pictures, through
Right.
street signs,
Yep.
whatever it may be. There's zero stories on the wall. So I don't do well in those situations
I
at
got you.
all. But Station 8, Station 7, 68s, 51s, 28s, you got to go to Station 28. If you really want to see a story being told, go to Station 28. It's phenomenal. A guy on the job for 40 some odd years put all of his personal money into making sure that history was captured there. Phenomenal.
Write that down, Tucker.
So some things that you really, were touching on earlier was, and I mentioned a little earlier too, the size of the city of Houston is 670 square miles, and that the unincorporated part of the county is almost as big as the city itself. The problem there is our volunteers are no longer.
Yeah.
We are transitioning to these combination departments,
Yeah.
which really look like a full-time department with a volunteer. We're going to keep you around just to make everybody happy. The problem is we don't have enough firefighters to staff those stations, so who works at those stations? The Houston guys,
Right.
on their days off.
Yep.
So they're all working there. So they do bring some of those traditions. They do bring that culture. However, it's from Big Brother. And the volunteers that are in some of those stations are
Mm-hmm. Right.
really looking over going, well, you think you're the biggest, the baddest.
Yeah,
the
you guys are
best.
coming in and I get it.
So there ends up being some issues, but I think there's that common ground,
Mm-hmm.
and there ends up, I can think of a couple off the top of my head, there ends up guys embracing each other, and you will see some of that history in some of those new stations. I can't say all of them. They're going up crazy, like you said, but the guys that have been on the job for a long time are going over to the old stations and bringing some of that
great.
history with them.
It's important.
The game well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that at all down there. I can tell you that.
Are you familiar with it? The
Oh
game
yeah,
also say-
absolutely. We have it in our old fire museum.
Oh,
So
okay.
the old fire museum's Station 7, and they have the whole system in there, which is really, really cool.
I've never been to Houston that I know of. I don't
come down.
remember. Yeah, love to.
Gotta
Love
come
to.
down. So,
But
it's,
awesome. And then, just want to get into one other thing that I think, and you hit on it too, and I'm super excited to talk about this because it's not as common all over the country, but the Chief's aide or the Chief's driver or
Chief's buggy.
Chief's, the
Yeah,
buggy,
the
right?
buggy,
Depends
right.
on where you're from, right?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Bear, man, explain that time to me because you said that was some of the best stuff you've done. I mean, learning and hit on it, brother.
Absolutely. Officer development, I think, pardon me, one of my colleagues at the training academy, we sat down and talked about this for probably 8 or 10 hours one day. And so most of our district chiefs within the Houston Fire Department have 20 plus years of service in. We do have a couple that have promoted up within about 14 or 15 years. They hit the promotional test really right, and they came out in the top X amount. So they didn't spend a lot of time as a captain. They didn't spend a lot of time as a driver. They didn't spend a lot of time as a firefighter, which there become some issues with that.
I get it.
So my particular chief had 32 years of service when I got to driving him, and 34 years of service, and he went out with 36 years. So the good thing about it was he promoted to chief at 30 years. So he was only a chief for about 4 years. However, he was a captain for 10 and a senior captain for about 6. So he had a lot of good company officer experience in there. So as a driver, I came in and I saw a lot of good company officer knowledge, and he passed that on to me. Hey man, handle this situation, sit back, listen on that situation, interact with these guys, this way, and then some of my fond memories of this was our chiefs meetings. So as the chief's aide, you go to the other meetings with the other district chiefs and the deputy chief and the assistant chiefs and the fire chiefs, and you really get to see where the department's trying to move and how it's trying to move and how they're dealing with some of the issues. And water supply, for example, water supply became an issue on a particular warehouse because the nearest plug was 2,000 feet away, and we don't have more than 500 gallons on any fire truck.
Right.
So warehouse fire with
A lot of inline pumping.
yeah, absolutely. So what's a nurse line too, and not necessarily, that's not something that we talk about because we've got a fire hydrant on every corner.
Right.
And so you sit there and you listen to these chiefs talking about it and going back and forth, and this is what I think you should do and this is how you should do it, and I'm sitting there going, wow, this is really, really cool. And we're flies on the wall. All the chiefs aides
of the inner working, right?
are along the back
Making sure
wall.
all the coffee's good on the
Yeah, absolutely. But you're listening to
Yeah.
it too,
Yeah.
as well. And so, not only that, but you get to look at each firehouse within your particular district, which mine had 6. How the culture is so different too, and how the personnel, and it could be the formal leader that drive that culture, or it could be the informal leader that drive the culture too. One of the fire stations, slowest stations in the city, had an informal leader that drove the culture, that we knew we could always count on those guys over here, but it was because of that informal leader. And if he was off the fire truck that day, you never knew what you were gonna get. Even with the regular captain, the regular chauffeur,
I get that. I get that completely, because a lot of times, I mean, I just know, and especially now we have younger officers coming online. The senior guys that are on those companies, they kind of fuel the discipline and the growth and the know-how and so on. There's no doubt.
So as a firefighter, a driver, a captain in the fire station, I would have never seen that unless I was a chief chauffeur.
Yeah.
But you also need, as a chief chauffeur, I think you need somebody who is educated in multiple disciplines, as you were saying, prepares you for that next call. So there again, with a little bit of hazmat background, a little bit of ARF background, my chief thought I made the perfect aid for that particular station, which sat at the end of the runway for that particular fire, for that particular airport. So, and he would look at me, hey, look, we got this wheel fire on this particular aircraft. What do you think we should do? And I would tell him, okay, this is what ARF is going to do with that particular wheel fire, and this is what we should do with our companies. And so, very, very easy, very way to work around it. But that discipline of being very diverse, I think, is probably one of the main things that for me, a chief's aide needs.
So many places don't have chief's aides.
No.
Yeah.
They just don't. Yeah, I mean, I know, like, the city does, and a bunch of other, metropolitan cities, but the smaller cities can't afford them. No. They don't have them, right? And I know in a lot of places the chief's aide is, on structural fires, they're the eyes and ears on the floors above and out back, and they do so much on behalf of the chief that is such a prestigious position to be in, because they're treated like the chief and respected like the chief, because he's that person, he, she, whoever, is bringing back all this information and processing that information to the chief so that the chief can make the right decisions. And I think a lot of people aren't familiar with that position.
No.
And I think that's a really unique topic that we should probably dive into
Yeah.
on another whole episode just dedicated to it. Because, like you said, I mean, the amount of stuff you got privy to just because you were in that seat, and what you could do, and the decision making, and what goes into the decision making, it's awesome.
You know, some things that the two experiences that I had there that I can think of that come to mind. We were the first in an apartment fire that wasn't even in our steel alarm territory. It was in another steel alarm. They were out. They happened to be out on a wreck. That engine and truck company was on a wreck on the freeway. So the first thing I did when I pulled up, I said, Chief, I'm going to do the 360 for you. You're right here at the buggy.
Right.
And everybody's going to show up to the buggy. That's the office side. I'm going to do your 360, and I'm going to tell you all your points of access, etc. Right. Come right back. Sure enough, by the time I got back, the first in engine company was pulling in. We were able to give them the exact lowdown.
Yep.
And that happened quite a bit.
Sure.
With us in that particular district. So another particular fire, we mutual aided with the company or a city outside, and their radio system and our radio system, we couldn't patch them together. There was no way to patch them. So very difficult to bring my resources in and help you play on your sandbox. Sure. Without being able to talk to you unless it's face-to-face talking. When we're talking about 4 different 8-unit apartment buildings that are burning at this point, I need to be able to talk. At least the chief needs to be able to talk to all of our guys. And so one of the things I told my chief, I said, hey man, I'm going to go get a radio from Humble. I'll wear their radio and I'll listen to our radio. I have one mic in this ear and one mic in that ear, and I'll be able to give you what's going on and help direct this. So a lot of times guys didn't think about the radio systems not being able to communicate. And it wasn't our guys' fault. The patch system at our dispatch, it wasn't their fault. This was a brand new system that this particular city had brought up, and they didn't have the software to patch into our system.
I think it's pretty interesting because, I mean, you are a massive metropolitan department, and so, like, going mutual aid, more and more I talk to some guys from different cities, like San Antonio was the same thing. Like, they're like, oh yeah, all the outskirts and outlying, like, we'd call mutual aid into our own fires, even though we had companies available, but they were just closer because they cover such a vast area. Here in the Northeast, we do mutual aid. A lot of times the outside companies go into the city to cover, not New York City. New York City rarely ever gets outside assistance. But other little cities and so on, 4-engine, two truck type cities, they're always backfilling with the companies around them. And so interoperability is massive, and it's huge, and it's an everyday conversation. But I can foresee on a large metropolitan department, they're like, we're self-sufficient in a way,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this day and age, there needs to be a way to communicate, and especially if you're working with others outside, there needs to be a way. So yeah.
Well, or I think it takes one of the big difficulties we had after Hurricane Harvey was there wasn't a memorandum of understanding signed with any one of the other 53 fire departments.
Wow.
And
Yeah, we had that in New York, New Jersey with 9/11.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you sure did. So moving forward, we've got to start signing those down in our area because we are self-sufficient, just like we were saying with the city. I mean, rarely ever. We surround a couple of little cities, and we Mavis them and some of our box assignments when we Mavis into their area for their box assignments. But everybody else, it's like, we got it. We don't need it, and we can pull. I could pull from the other side of the city with a 30-minute drive time, run lights and sirens, and that company will be able to do the job that we expect them to do. Our hoses will marry up.
Yeah, right. But on the other end, though, you brought up a good point, though. Harvey, Katrina, like these massive, natural disasters that can occur in a large metropolitan city like yourself. I mean, like when that hits, look at like New Orleans, right? Katrina, I read something in your bio that you were part of the recovery and operations there.
I was on our USAR team at the time.
Yeah. I mean, and so, you might have all the resources, but man, I'll tell you, like Sandy in New York City, we were part of that. You know, I mean, and so on. So I don't care how big your department is. At some point, you know, something's going to happen. Yeah, you know, and no doubt. So I mean, I think that's incredible though. And you guys. When's the last time you went? So, what was the biggest natural disaster that you've seen down there? I mean, you guys get a lot coming off the Gulf, right? I mean, you guys are in.
Harvey was probably the biggest
Okay.
that we've had. There was 50 inches of rain within 2 days' time. My wife is a geologist. She's got a PhD in geology. She's the nerd, the breadwinner of the family.
I get it.
Just the fireman of the group. You know?
My wife's a hell of a lot smarter than I am too.
Yeah,
I
right.
get it.
The smartest decision I ever made was marrying
Yeah,
her.
that's right. That's right. No doubt.
So, but she was telling me through her little community that the actual land surface within the Houston area sunk 1/8 of an inch because of that much
that's
rain.
fascinating.
Put that much weight on the.
That's incredible.
Saturation.
Yeah, just crazy. So yeah. So back to this Mavis, where we're talking about a little bit earlier, our mutual aiding. We had at the time about 40 rescue boats within the metropolitan area there in Harris County. Now we've got over 120. But the big issue was, I knew Jeremy had a rescue boat, 6 districts away, and I needed one here. So I'd call Jeremy on the phone and say, "Hey man, can you bring your rescue boat over?" And you drive by 30 or 40 rescues to get to me. And so the whole new system, we could talk about it later, but we've actually going into an agreement with the county and the other fire departments to actually pool our resources in the time of a natural disaster to where I don't get on the radio at my particular station to ask for a rescue boat from the closest station, or from a particular station. I'll get the rescue boat from the closest station, regardless of what agency it is. So, and we're doing that all through a software system. Pretty cool stuff. So,
Yeah, no doubt. That's cool.
Some of the things I want to touch on real quick before we get out of here is what's tomorrow look like? And some of the things we've got to really look at is tomorrow. Big issues that have been in the news lately. The active shooter, of course, stuff.
Yep.
And that's not our pool. We don't our sandbox. Active shooter is not our sandbox. But guess what? You better start getting ready to play in that sandbox. And if you're not ready to play, you're way behind the ball. And that is a police in the city of Houston. We always looked at it as, hey, look, that's an emergency medical scene, and so we're there. We're the incident commanders. When that's a police scene, anybody shooting, I don't have anything to protect myself when somebody's shooting at me. That's a police scene, and so we're moving towards this. Hey, look, the cops. This is their particular show. And we need to come in and support them medically.
Right.
But not only that, how many different police departments do you guys have right around here? Every little town has their own police department,
Absolutely.
right? So a call goes out that there's a shooting in the school in Harrington Park. I can tell you what, right now, one of the police officers from this particular police department will be responding there, regardless, okay? Now, how about us? Maybe your truck's staffed here in Hohokus, and they know they've got a school full of kids that are being shot up. Hohokus going to go over there because one of the other trucks is not staffed. Harrington Park's not staffed right now.
Right.
Hohokus, it may be one of the fire trucks that goes over there. I'm just saying hypothetically.
No, you're right.
So we have got to start training together going forward.
Yeah.
And you've got to get a whole core group of people and looking at these different type of all hazard calls that we're responding to.
After Columbine, a lot of that happened in this area, but it's faded since then.
Yeah.
Our police department, our ambulance corps, our fire department all had radios that we all had frequencies to.
Sure.
All you needed to do was change the bank.
Yeah.
Since then, that's changed.
Yep.
Now the police have gone back to their private, where we can't talk to them. We have to go through a relay. Which the reason why it was designed was just for that Columbine situation. Absolutely. You might have the engine parked outside of the school. There's nobody in it. It's just there as a blocker.
Sure.
But a policeman comes out, he's been shot at, and he doesn't have his radio anymore. He can crawl in the fire truck, go to the bank, and talk to people.
Easy.
And what came out of Columbine was all these one-man tanks showing up,
Yep.
and no one could talk to each other.
Right.
So that's what we brought back out of that. But now we're changing back because we haven't had that incident.
I think in this area it's pretty interesting. Just in northern New Jersey, there's a lot of non-interoperability where there shouldn't be, and that has to be addressed on our level. But this is a national platform, and we talk about there are so many departments, and I'm sure Houston's one of them that is taking the lead in understanding, knowing, and how to address situations like this. But it needs to be on a large scale all the way down to the small scale, to our local. There's no doubt. Rob, I wish Rob was here because Rob, outside of all of this, has a firearms training company that he runs, and he also does lectures on school shootings.
Sure.
And the emergency response and the first responder response to it. And so Rob is very well versed in that, and he's also well versed in mental health and critical incident stress, which I know you're involved with as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so this is definitely a hot topic in the industry, and it's scary the fact that we have to talk about it.
Sure.
But it's got to be talked about.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm feeling that you are part of, maybe the design team for it or something down in Houston, or you have a background in it, or it's just the law enforcement fire side in you, or...
I heard cats, down there. You ever heard cats before? Right? So, yeah, so there is a little bit of background there. But, not only, back to the whole platform, not only capture the past, but also what does tomorrow look like?
Yeah.
We've got to be, those senior members on the truck and in the departments have got to be the ones that say, what's tomorrow look like for her?
Mm-hmm.
What's tomorrow look like for him?
Yeah.
And what can we do to make it better for them going forward? Not only tell the stories of yesterday, but hey guys, you need to be the ones to nudge, and let's talk about this training that I found on YouTube. Hey, we need to be the ones that nudge the process of, let's get everybody back together in the same room. Let's start working together. I know you make the same calls with the same cops, the same calls, the same EMS. However, there's a cop that's detailed here that you don't know.
Right.
However, you may make something on the GSP that you've never responded with somebody else, and the best way to do that is exchange that business card before the disaster happens, whether it's a fire, a shooting, or an accident. And I think that's we gotta be pushing that as well. Going forward is sitting down, starting to light the fire. Do I have the answers? No. She may.
Right.
Some of her experiences, she may. And let them run with it. Hey, get after it. I'm back here trying to tell you the stories and bring the stories forward. But I want you to start thinking about this and let people.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that this industry is ever evolving.
Yeah.
And that, we, at the end of the day, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, that, when somebody needs help, they call the fire department. In fact, this day and age, more and more people are relying on us and the police and EMS to do more and more for them.
Our population is not keeping up with the population. Our fire,
Right.
EMS,
I'm with you.
police,
Right.
we're not keeping up with the population growth of the United States. So we really, we can't hope and pray of what people think, or think that we're valuable. We've got to really start looking at this and approaching it from a different perspective.
And it takes progressive leadership. It takes leadership that understands and acknowledges that the job is ever changing, and they have to be willing to sign on to the new, follow the new trends, understand, learn. If the day you stop learning, is the day you're out. I mean, you just, and I hate throwing things out like that, because people throw that crap out there all the time with different sayings, and this and that. If you're not learning, you're dying, But in some situations, it's the God's honest truth. You can't stop learning and you can't stop training. And so if we're going to become parts of an active shooter scene or chemical war, or look at all the white powder calls I bet you guys went on 10 years ago when that all
Still going on,
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, and that was something the day earlier, somebody got white powder. They're like, what the hell is this? And threw it in the garbage.
Right.
So it's everything evolves. And so I agree with you. I mean, we have to continue to better ourselves and the service we provide to the end user. That's it. It's our job.
Yeah.
Even outside the industry, everything's evolving. The science, you don't know what's inside anything that's burning anymore. It's so much synthetic and chemicals. And just you were talking about natural disasters earlier, those are on the rise too. So not only do you have human man-made issues with the population, with the active shooters, but you also have all these storms and you have all these new technologies, whether it be transportation or building construction, that just being a well-rounded person in general, taking classes, pursuing outside interests, I feel like is so valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right.
Good.
Yeah.
So what's next for you?
I don't know. I've got a wife that has been putting off promotions for my love of the Houston Fire Department. If
Yeah.
we get 20 years there, then we're gonna look at something. We're gonna look at something else. If it's moving back up this way, then great. If not, then I'll stay there at least 25 to 27 is the plan now. The original plan was 33.
Good.
So the 20 in the pension, and then the 13 drop, but now that's all changed. I lost a considerable amount of money, so I need to follow her and let her promote up.
Sure, of course.
And do what she wants to do. So, and we got a 2-year-old, and I got a 1-month-old at home. So the 2-year-old is wrapped right there around her finger.
Of
and
course.
So the 1-month-old, he of course he'll be my hunting buddy and all that
Nice.
kind of stuff. So
That's fantastic.
yeah. So
Well, listen, man, I mean, I can't thank you enough. This was cool. I know you didn't know what to expect. I mean, we kind of just reached out to each other while you were up here and
Yeah.
so on. But, I mean, we've been going an hour and a half already. I mean, it goes quick. We could sit here all day.
oh, we
But,
could yeah.
One last question, real quick.
Yeah.
How'd you get the nickname Bear?
I was just
Oh,
going
that's
to ask
good.
that.
Good story. So yeah.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, right. You stopped our conversation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Sebby, well done. Heather, just blurt it out next time. Don't be afraid.
So I was born in Waco, home of the Baylor Bears, and 7 pounds 8 ounces, 21 inches long, normal sized kid. And my mom took me in for my 2-month checkup, and the doctor said, "Hey, what have you been feeding this kid?" And I said, "Well, he's hungry. Every time he's crying, I'm feeding him." The doctor said, "Well, he's growing way too fast. You need to put him on a diet." So I went on my first diet at 2 months old. Okay? All you other folks that are going on these New Year's resolution diets,
Yeah.
I got you beat.
No doubt. That's funny.
So went back for the 4-month checkup, and the doctor said, "I told you to put him on a diet." And my mom said, "Well, he was on a diet, but he's been kicking, crying, and screaming. He won't sleep at night, this and that." And the doctor said, "You know what? Take him off a diet. He's going to be a Baylor Bear." So they called me Sugar Bear until about 6th grade. Or, I'm sorry, 6 years old. I got to 1st grade, and everybody's poking fun of the Sugar Bear.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
All right, drop that sugar part of it, and I'll just be Bear.
Bear.
So there's a lot of Jason Wilsons in this world, and you can just Google that all you want to all day long, and you'll find all sorts, multiple stories about that. So about 7th grade, there was a Jason Wilson in the 6th grade. I got his discipline slips because, remember, nothing was electronic at the time. Everything was carbon copy paper. This is back in the 80s. And so I'm Jason O. Wilson. He was like Jason X. Wilson or something like that. So when they went to file the discipline slip, it went in my file. And my dad said, "If you ever got a pop at school, you got a pop when you come home."
Of course.
So, or 2 pops when you got home. So I got a pop for nothing. And it was because of Jason X. Wilson. And so, so from then on, I said, "You know what? It's going to be a bear because there's not a lot of bears in this world. Maybe somebody's chocolate lab running around is bear. There's not a lot of bears in this world, so we'll just stick with bear." So everybody knows. They don't know the guys at the station. Who's this Jason guy? you know, a piece of paper that comes across or whatever. So.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Cameron died apparently.
Right?
Oh, right during the story, Seb.
So do you remember what you said?
Two pops at home.
We got 2 pops at home.
Oh, no. This is why we have editing.
That's good.
Yeah,
enough.
exactly. Magic of editing.
That's fantastic.
We still got
So-
a while to go.
Well, listen,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's great.
I mean, I can't thank you enough for being here. This
So-
was cool.
I want
Yeah.
to extend the invitation. Come to Houston
Let's go.
anytime.
Got good food down there.
You got room in your coat. You're heading back next week, right? Wait, no, you got a 2-year-old and a
That's it.
1-month-old.
You don't
I'll
want that.
fly down. I'll meet you there.
So yeah, anytime you guys want
Thank
to come
you.
down there, we got a seat on the fire truck. We'll throw you on there and let you ride around. And
Let me ask you. I have to ask because to me, it's. I always say this, and it is humbling to me that what we've started here and the people we get to meet, and like my phone, you know, kids under 30 don't know what a Rolodex is, but like my Rolodex and my phone
Yep.
is just incredible because I've talked to so many people. Do you know what a Rolodex is?
Yes.
All right. So, but you know, and it's incredible, and then to get invites like that is you know just mind numbing to me. But and I thank you, and we will take you up on that. I can assure you. But my thing is like Texas. Like, how'd you find us? Just on Instagram or on Facebook? Like, I'm just curious.
Instagram.
Instagram.
I got rid of Facebook when I got married. There was way too
Yeah, I
many,
can
I
understand
got
that.
married 5 years ago. There was way too many skeletons in the closet. So I
Yeah,
got
yeah,
rid of
yeah.
Facebook. So,
Smart man.
So I started Instagram. Yeah, I want to stay married. I love my
Yeah,
wife.
right.
So yeah, Instagram, and I'm not. I don't have a lot of friends on there, and I'm real picky and
Right.
choosy with that stuff. I don't want to see a bunch of noise, and
Right.
I don't want to hear somebody who's teaching something wrong or saying something wrong, or I want to hear something that's a different lens sometimes. And so I do not know how National Fire Radio popped up in my Instagram, but you were talking about an apparatus innovation. I thought, man, that's pretty cool. This is probably May.
Okay.
Sometime.
Yeah,
May,
so early
June.
on.
Yeah, very early on.
Yeah.
And so let me follow this guy. And so every time that you start talking about these apparatus innovations, I'm like, man, we have one of our units. It's a stairway, but we don't have the ability to open up the stairway and store anything behind it.
Right.
It is empty space back there.
Right.
And so I took it to the chief, and so we have a special hazmat district chief, and I took it to him and one of the apparatus guys for our. Say, hey, dude, look at this. You know, this is a great idea. Why aren't we putting anything inside the stairway that
Yeah.
we hardly ever go up?
Yeah.
Right.
Just to refill the kitty litter.
Right.
And so that's kind of how some things started catching on with us.
That's cool.
And where I got the idea of talking about the wiffle ball and
Yeah.
the sample line. So was all because of you. So
That's
I
cool.
have to. As I said earlier, I'm honored to be here and talk to you just because of that. So
That's so funny to me.
I know.
We're just a bunch of idiots. I mean, I love it, but thank you. I mean, honestly though, I mean, I am honored, and I'm just so grateful for the friendships that we're making along the way, and
absolutely.
the fact that we have a friend in Houston, and you know, and if we ever get down that way, we certainly will reach out. I mean, I love it, but it's about running in the right circles and loving the job and loving the craft, and you know, everybody that's in it for the right reasons tend to huddle together, and
Yeah.
so this has been really good. So, Bear, thank you, brother. I can't thank you enough for being here.
I
Awesome.
appreciate it. It is.
What
It's
a-
been wonderful.
What a great day. And, well, that's it, man. We're going to wrap this thing up. We've been going a while and so on. So, for Bear, Jason Wilson out of Houston Fire, captain of the hazmat team down there, or one of the captains on the hazmat team. And, of course, Tucker and Heather, our new face. She's going to be so good for us. I'm so excited to have you. And, of course, Jeremy, the loudmouth of National Fire Radio. Thanks, guys, for checking us out. This is the official last day in this studio.
Keep saying that.
I know, we keep saying that. But I have to say, though, this thing, you know, there's not much to it, but it's been fun. And the next chapter's starting. So this is it for the end of the year. Guys, thank you. Happy New Year to everybody working on the line over the shift into 2019. Stay safe and keep watching. We have a lot more coming out. And for myself and the Bear and the rest of National Fire Radio, thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New
And,
Year. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Yes!
All right. Hey now. Come on, get in here.
Sam, get over here.
Let's see if we can all squeeze in. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Awesome.
Cool.
Love it.
Cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Good stuff.